A mother and her young son settle into their first-class seats, exhausted but smiling, ready for a well-deserved vacation. But their peace is shattered when an entitled passenger marches down the aisle, points a finger at her, and demands she be sent to the back of the plane. He thought he owned the world. He thought nobody would stand up to him. He had no idea the airline's CEO was sitting right inside the cockpit, listening to every single word. The fluorescent lights of Equitas International Airport's Terminal 4 buzzed with the chaotic, relentless energy of a Friday morning. For 34-year-old Chloe Hughes, the ambient noise of rolling suitcases, muffled intercom announcements, and rushed goodbyes was nothing short of a victory symphony. She stood near gate B24, her fingers tightly intertwined with the small, warm hand of her 7-year-old son, Leo. Today was not just another travel day. It was a milestone. For the past 5 years, Chloe had poured every ounce of her soul into building her own software consulting firm. There had been countless sleepless nights, missed bedtimes, and moments where she stared at her bank account, wondering if the risk would ever pay off. But it had. After securing a massive contract with a Fortune 500 company the previous month, Chloe had decided to do something completely out of character. She splurged. She bought 2 first-class direct flight tickets from New York to Los Angeles for a week-long mother-son vacation at Disneyland. Leo was practically vibrating with excitement. He wore a slightly oversized denim jacket, plastered with space patches, and clutched his favorite comic book to his chest. "Are we really going to sit in the big seats, Mom?" Leo asked, his wide brown eyes looking up at her, sparkling with pure, unadulterated joy. "We sure are, baby," Chloe smiled, kneeling down to adjust the collar of his shirt. "We are going to have plenty of legroom, warm nuts, and all the apple juice you can possibly drink. You earned it for being such a good helper this year. Attention passengers on Flight 482 to Los Angeles," the gate agent's voice crackled over the PA system. "We are now beginning the boarding process. At this time, we welcome our first-class passengers, as well as our Diamond Elite members, to board through the priority lane." "That's us," Chloe whispered, giving Leo's hand a gentle squeeze. As they stepped onto the plush blue carpet that designated the priority boarding lane, Chloe felt a sudden, sharp brush against her shoulder. A tall man in a meticulously tailored charcoal gray suit pushed past her, his hard-shell leather briefcase bumping against her hip. He didn't offer an apology. Instead, he let out an irritated sigh and planted himself directly in front of them in the line. Chloe took a breath, deciding not to let a rude stranger ruin their morning. But the man, who wore an expression of perpetual disdain, glanced back over his shoulder. His eyes, a cold, icy blue, scanned Chloe's comfortable but stylish travel attire, a beige cashmere sweater and dark jeans, and then dropped to Leo. His lip curled into a microscopic sneer. "Excuse me," the man said, his voice dripping with condescension. "I believe they only called First Class and Diamond Elite." Chloe met his gaze evenly. She had dealt with men like him her entire professional life, men who assumed that because she was a young black woman, she was automatically in the wrong room, the wrong meeting, or the wrong boarding line. "I heard the announcement clearly, thank you," Chloe replied, her tone polite, but laced with absolute steel. The man scoffed, a short, dismissive sound. "Right. Well, they usually call economy zones by group number. You might want to check your boarding pass before you clog up the priority lane. The rest of us actually have places to be." Before Chloe could deliver the sharp retort forming on her tongue, the gate agent smiled warmly at her. "Good morning. Passports and boarding passes, please." Chloe handed over her phone with the digital passes. The scanner beeped a pleasant, confirming chime. "Welcome back, miss." "Hughes," the agent said, her eyes briefly flicking to the screen. "Seats 2A and 2B. Have a wonderful flight to Los Angeles." Chloe smiled graciously, took her phone, and guided Leo past the man in the suit, who was suddenly patting down his pockets in search of his own boarding pass. She didn't look back, but she could feel the heat of his gaze burning into her spine. Walking down the jet bridge, the heavy scent of jet fuel and sanitized air filled Chloe's lungs. It smelled like freedom. When they stepped onto the plane, the lead flight attendant, a woman with a welcoming smile and a name tag that read, Jessica, greeted them. "Welcome aboard." "Right this way, second row on the left." The first-class cabin was an oasis of calm compared to the terminal. Soft, ambient lighting illuminated the spacious leather recliners. Leo gasped audibly as he climbed into seat 2B, immediately marveling at the massive entertainment screen and the complimentary amenity kit resting on his seat. "Mum, look, they gave us socks and a toothbrush," Leo whispered, treating the basic travel kit like it was a chest of pirate gold. "Tuck it in your bag, sweetie," Chloe laughed, stowing her carry-on in the overhead bin. She slid into seat 2A right by the window and exhaled a long, deep breath. The tension of the morning began to melt away. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, letting the reality wash over her. They were actually doing this. But the peace was incredibly short-lived. The heavy, rhythmic thud of hard-soled dress shoes marching down the aisle signaled the arrival of the man from the gate. Chloe opened her eyes just in time to see him stop at row 2. He looked down at his ticket, then looked across the aisle at Chloe and Leo. His face hardened. His seat was 2C, directly across the aisle from Leo. "You've got to be kidding me," the man muttered under his breath, loud enough for half the cabin to hear. Chloe's maternal instinct flared. She placed a protective hand on Leo's arm. The flight hadn't even pushed back from the gate yet, but the air in the cabin was already beginning to turn toxic. The stage was set, and the turbulence was about to begin long before they ever left the ground. Bradley Whitmore was a man who was used to getting his way. As a senior vice president of an aggressive investment firm, his entire life was structured around hierarchy, status, and exclusivity. To Bradley, first class wasn't just a comfortable way to travel. It was a physical barrier that separated him from the masses. It was a sanctuary where he didn't have to deal with crying children, messy snacks, or people he deemed inappropriate for his environment. He violently shoved his leather briefcase into the overhead bin, slamming it shut with a force that made a nearby flight attendant flinch. He dropped heavily into seat 2C, unbuttoning his suit jacket and shooting a lethal glare across the aisle. Leo, oblivious to the man's hostility, was happily scrolling through the movie selections on his screen. "Mom, they have all the superhero movies, even the new one." "Keep your voice down just a little bit, Leo," Chloe whispered gently, leaning over to adjust his seatbelt. "Use your inside voice." "Yes, please," Bradley snapped from across the aisle, not even pretending to look at a magazine. "Some of us are trying to enjoy the premium experience we paid for without listening to a daycare center." Chloe turned her head slowly. She locked eyes with Bradley. "He is speaking at a perfectly normal volume, sir. We haven't even taken off yet." "It's about the principle," Bradley shot back, his voice rising a decibel. "This cabin is designed for business professionals and people who value peace and quiet. It's not a playground. It's a commercial flight, not a private jet." Chloe responded smoothly, refusing to raise her voice. "If you wanted complete isolation, perhaps you should have chartered one." A passenger in row 3, an older woman reading a novel, let out a quiet, muffled chuckle. Bradley's face flushed a deep, ugly shade of crimson. His pride had been stung, and for a man like Bradley, a bruised ego was the ultimate offense. He pressed the call button above his head. The chime echoed loudly in the quiet cabin. Within seconds, a young flight attendant named Emily hurried over. She looked slightly nervous, her hands clasped tightly in front of her crisp navy blue apron. "Yes, sir, how can I assist you today?" "There's been a massive ticketing error," Bradley stated, waving his hand vaguely in the direction of Chloe and Leo. "These two are clearly in the wrong section. I need you to check their boarding passes and move them to their correct seats in the back." Emily blinked, momentarily taken aback. She glanced warmly at Chloe, who was sitting perfectly still, radiating a terrifying calm. "Sir," Emily said gently, "I assure you, our gate system won't allow passengers to board if they aren't assigned to this cabin. Everyone in first class has been verified." "Then verify it again," Bradley demanded, crossing his arms over his chest. "Look at them. Do they look like they belong in first class?" The kid is already making a racket, and the mother is completely unapologetic. "I paid $4,000 for this seat, and I am not going to spend 6 hours sitting next to." This, the word "this" hung in the air like a foul odor. The implication was heavy, toxic, and deeply offensive. Chloe felt a spike of adrenaline shoot through her chest, but she forcefully pushed down her anger. She could not lose her temper. She knew the rules of the world she lived in. If the angry white man in the suit yelled, he was asserting his rights. If she, a black woman, raised her voice in defense, she would immediately be labeled aggressive and likely escorted off the plane by security. She had to be smarter than him. "My son and I are in our assigned seats," Chloe said to Emily, holding up her phone with the digital boarding passes clearly displayed. 2A and 2B. "We have done nothing to disrupt this flight, and I will not be harassed by a man who clearly has issues with women and children occupying spaces he believes belong exclusively to him. I have issues with people who don't know their place." Bradley barked, his voice booming through the cabin. A few heads from economy began popping out from behind the curtain to see what the commotion was. Emily held up her hands in a placating gesture. "Sir, please lower your voice. Miss Hughes is correct. She is in her assigned seat. I can offer you a complimentary pre-flight beverage, but there is no one moving to the back of the plane today." "I don't want a damn drink," Bradley snarled, unbuckling his seatbelt and standing up in the aisle. He towered over Emily, trying to use his physical size to intimidate the young flight attendant. "I am a Diamond Elite frequent flyer with over 2 million miles on this airline. I know the executives in corporate. If you don't remove her and her brat from this cabin right now, I will personally see to it that you are standing in the unemployment line by Monday morning." Leo shrank back into his seat, his eyes wide with fear. He reached over and grabbed the sleeve of Chloe's sweater. "Mommy, is that man mad at us? Did I do something wrong?" Hearing the tremor in her son's voice snapped something deep inside Chloe. The calculated restraint she had been practicing vanished. She stood up. Though she was a foot shorter than Bradley, her presence was commanding. "Do not speak about my son," Chloe said, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous register that demanded absolute silence from the entire cabin. "You will not threaten this flight attendant, and you will certainly not threaten me. Sit down, shut your mouth, and act like the professional you claim to be." Bradley looked completely taken aback, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Before he could unleash whatever venom was pooling in his mind, the curtain to the front galley parted. "Jessica, The lead flight attendant stepped into the aisle, her face unreadable but her eyes sharp. "What is going on here?" "What's going on," Bradley spat, "is that I am demanding a manager. Better yet, get me the captain. Right now. Because this plane is not pushing back from the gate until this woman is thrown off my flight." The silence in the first-class cabin was deafening. The only sound was the low, mechanical hum of the plane's air conditioning system. Every passenger was practically holding their breath, their eyes darting between Bradley's furious, red-faced stance, Chloe's unwavering, protective posture, and Jessica, the lead flight attendant, who was now standing firmly between them. "Sir," Jessica said, her voice dropping into the authoritative tone reserved for unruly passengers, "I need you to step back and lower your voice immediately. Threatening other passengers and making demands of the flight crew is a violation of federal aviation regulations." Bradley scoffed loudly, a harsh, grating sound. He dug into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek black metallic card, aggressively shoving it into Jessica's face. "Do you see this?" he demanded. "This is a chairman's club card. It means that I spend more money with this airline in a month than you make in a year. I play golf with Richard, the VP of Regional Operations, so don't quote federal regulations to me. I want the captain out here right now, or I am calling corporate and having this entire flight crew grounded." Jessica didn't flinch. She looked at the black card, then up at Bradley's sweaty, furious face. "Sir, your frequent flyer status does not grant you the authority to remove ticketed passengers from this aircraft, just because you don't like sitting near them. Miss Hughes and her son have every right to be here. They are a disruption." Bradley yelled, wildly gesturing toward Leo, who was now visibly trembling, tears welling up in his dark eyes. "The only disruption here is you, sir," an older man in seat 3D suddenly chimed in, tossing his newspaper aside. "Sit down and let the rest of us go to LA. You're throwing a tantrum like a toddler. Mind your own business." Bradley snapped, rounding on the older passenger. Chloe placed her hands gently over Leo's ears, shielding him from the escalating vitriol. "Jessica," Chloe said evenly, keeping her composure despite the rapid beating of her heart, "I do not feel safe with this man sitting across the aisle from my child. His behavior is volatile and aggressive. If anyone needs to be removed from this flight, it is him." "Oh, you'd love that, wouldn't you?" Bradley sneered, leaning aggressively toward Chloe, invading her personal space. "You think you can play the victim and get me kicked off? People like you always want a free ride. You probably used miles you didn't even earn to get up here, acting like you belong in a class you can't actually afford. You're a joke." The blatant, ugly prejudice hanging in his words caused a collective gasp to ripple through the cabin. Emily, the younger flight attendant, had her hand over her mouth. Jessica's expression turned to stone. "That is enough. Sir, grab your bags. You are coming with me to the front galley right now. We are ending this." "I'm not going anywhere with you," Bradley roared, completely abandoning any semblance of professional decorum. "I told you, get the captain. Get the pilot out here. I refuse to fly under these conditions. The captain will listen to a chairman's club member." As if summoned by the sheer volume of his tantrum, the heavy, reinforced cockpit door up at the front of the cabin unlatched with a loud clack. The door swung open. A man stepped out. He was tall, late 50s, with distinguished silver hair at his temples. He wore the crisp white button-down shirt of a pilot, complete with 4 gold stripes on his epaulets. But he didn't look like a standard captain checking on a minor cabin dispute. He carried an air of absolute, unquestionable authority. He didn't rush. He walked slowly down the short aisle toward row 2, his eyes locked onto Bradley Whitmore. "I am the pilot in command of this aircraft," the man said, his voice quiet but carrying a weight that forced everyone in the cabin to listen. "I was running my pre-flight checks, but it seems there is a disturbance threatening the safety of my passengers." Bradley immediately puffed up his chest, sensing an ally. He pointed a triumphant finger at Chloe. "Captain, thank God. Finally, someone with some sense. I am Bradley Whitmore, Chairman's Club member. This woman and her screaming child are causing a massive disturbance. She's been antagonistic since the boarding gate. I want them removed so we can get in the air." The captain stopped right in front of Bradley. He looked down at the black metallic card Bradley was still clutching. Then he turned his gaze to Chloe. He saw her protective stance. He saw the tears shining in little Leo's eyes. He saw the quiet dignity of a mother who was doing everything in her power to protect her son from a bully. "Is this true, ma'am?" the captain asked Chloe gently. "Were you causing a disturbance?" "No, sir," Chloe said, her voice steady. "My son and I were sitting quietly. This man began harassing us before we even took our seats. He demanded the flight attendants move us to economy because he didn't believe we belonged here." The captain nodded slowly. He turned back to Bradley. "Mr. Whitmore, is it?" the captain asked. "Yes, Bradley Whitmore, SVP at Vanguard Investments. Like I told your flight attendant, I know Richard in corporate. I expect a higher level of service on this airline." The captain reached up and slowly adjusted his collar. "You know Richard in corporate. Fascinating. And you feel that your chairman's club status entitles you to dictate who sits in this cabin. I expect to fly in a premium environment without being subjected to people who don't belong here," Bradley said, doubling down on his bigotry, utterly oblivious to the trap he was walking into. "Now, are you going to do your job and remove her, or do I need to make a phone call?" The captain looked at Bradley for a long, agonizing moment. The silence was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Mr. Whitmore," the captain finally spoke, his voice dangerously soft. "There is something you should know about my job." The captain reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a small, sleek leather ID wallet. He flipped it open. It wasn't a standard pilot's badge. It was a solid gold, intricately engraved corporate credential. "My name is Nathaniel Sterling," the man said, "and while I do occasionally pilot flights to keep my hours up, my primary job is Chief Executive Officer of this airline." The color completely drained from Bradley Whitmore's face. He looked like a man who had just stepped off a cliff and was waiting for the ground to hit him. Nathaniel Sterling, the billionaire CEO, did not break eye contact. And as the CEO, Nathaniel continued, his voice echoing in the dead silent cabin, "I have a very strict policy about how we treat our passengers, especially our paying guests." The silence that followed Nathaniel's revelation was absolute. The ambient hiss of the aircraft's ventilation system suddenly sounded like a roaring wind turbine in the quiet first-class cabin. Bradley Whitmore stared at the gold corporate credential resting in Nathaniel's palm. The color had violently drained from his face, leaving him looking like a freshly painted wall. His mouth hung slightly open, the aggressive, domineering posture he had held just seconds ago evaporating into thin air. He had demanded a manager. He had demanded the pilot. Instead, he had summoned the one man on the entire aircraft who held absolute power over his fate. Nathaniel snapped the leather ID wallet shut and slipped it back into his breast pocket. He folded his hands behind his back, his posture impeccably straight. I wasn't aware," Bradley stammered, the sharp bite of his voice replaced by a pathetic, reedy croak. "Sir, there has been a profound misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Nathaniel repeated, his voice dangerously soft. Let me assure you, Mr. Whitmore, my hearing is perfectly fine. From the cockpit, I heard you belittle my flight crew. I heard you threaten a young woman's job. And most egregiously, I heard you hurl baseless, discriminatory insults at a paying passenger and her young child. Bradley held up his hands, attempting a weak, placating gesture. Mr. CEO, you understand the stress of corporate travel. As a senior vice president at Vanguard Investments, my schedule is incredibly demanding. I simply need an environment conducive to my work. We all lose our temper sometimes. I meant no disrespect to your airline. But you meant disrespect to her. Nathaniel pointed directly at Chloe, who remained seated, her arm securely wrapped around Leo. You assumed entirely on your own prejudice that Ms. Hughes and her son did not belong in this cabin. You assumed they could not afford it. You assumed they were trespassing in a space you feel entitled to. Nathaniel took a single step closer to Bradley. Let me clarify how things operate on my airline, Mr. Whitmore. We have 3 non-negotiable pillars of service. Safety first. No passenger will ever fly if they pose a physical or psychological threat to the crew or other guests. Absolute respect. Our staff will treat every passenger with dignity, and we demand that passengers treat our staff with the same respect. Zero tolerance for discrimination. We do not care about your corporate title, your bank account, or the color of your credit card. Bigotry has no seat on this aircraft. You have managed to violate all 3 of these pillars before we even pushed back from the gate, Nathaniel stated, his tone freezing the air around them. Bradley's eyes darted frantically around the cabin, looking for a sympathetic face. He found none. The older gentleman in seat 3D was practically beaming with satisfaction. Emily, the flight attendant Bradley had threatened, stood taller, her earlier anxiety replaced by vindication. "I apologize," Bradley said, forcing the words out through gritted teeth. He looked at Chloe, though his eyes were devoid of actual remorse. "I apologize to you and your son. It was a lapse in judgment. Now, if we can just move past this, I have a crucial merger meeting in Los Angeles at 3 o'clock. "No," Nathaniel said simply. Bradley blinked. "Excuse me. You aren't going to Los Angeles on this flight," Nathaniel said, turning slightly to signal Jessica. "Jessica, please contact the gate agent and airport security. Mr. Whitmore will be deplaning immediately." Panic finally broke through Bradley's shock. "You can't do this. I am a Chairman's Club member. My firm spends millions on corporate travel with your airline every single year." "Actually," Nathaniel replied, a cold, calculating gleam in his eye, "Vanguard Investments did spend millions with us. I am well aware of the Vanguard account. In fact, our corporate partnership division has been reviewing the renewal of your firm's exclusive travel contract for the upcoming fiscal year. I was supposed to sign off on it next Tuesday." Bradley swallowed hard, a bead of sweat tracing down his temple. You wouldn't cancel a multi-million-dollar corporate contract over a seating dispute." "I am not canceling it over a seating dispute," Nathaniel corrected sharply. "I am canceling it because your behavior today demonstrates a catastrophic failure of leadership, judgment, and basic human decency. If Vanguard Investments employs senior vice presidents who believe it is acceptable to publicly abuse women and children, then Vanguard Investments does not align with our corporate values. I will personally call your CEO, Thomas Waverley, this afternoon to explain exactly why your firm's travel privileges have been permanently revoked." The cabin erupted into spontaneous applause. It wasn't the polite golf clap kind of applause, but genuine thunderous cheering. Bradley looked completely destroyed. In the span of 10 minutes, his arrogance had not only cost him his flight, but it was about to cost his company a massive logistical contract, and likely cost him his job. 2 Port Authority police officers, accompanied by the gate agent, stepped onto the aircraft. Their heavy-duty boots thudded against the carpet as they made their way into the first-class cabin. "Is there a problem here, Captain?" the lead officer asked, looking between Nathaniel and the profusely sweating Bradley. "This passenger is being denied boarding due to abusive behavior and failing to comply with crew instructions," Nathaniel informed the officers. "Please escort him off the aircraft." "Sir, grab your bags," the officer commanded, stepping up to Bradley. Bradley Whitmore, a man who had spent his entire morning trying to assert his dominance over everyone around him, was now a hollow shell. With trembling hands, he reached into the overhead bin and pulled out his hard-shell leather briefcase. He didn't look at Chloe. He didn't look at Leo. He kept his eyes glued to the floor as the officers escorted him down the aisle, off the plane, and back up the jet bridge. The heavy cabin door was finally pulled shut, and the latch engaged with a satisfying final click. With the immediate threat removed, the stifling tension in the cabin evaporated. Jessica, the lead flight attendant, immediately knelt next to Chloe's seat. "Miss Hughes, I am so incredibly sorry you and Leo had to experience that," Jessica said warmly. "Are you both all right?" Chloe let out a long, shaky exhale, her defensive posture finally relaxing. She looked down at Leo. Her son was no longer trembling. Instead, he was staring in absolute awe at Nathaniel, who was still standing in the aisle. "We are okay," Chloe smiled, her voice steady. "Thank you for stepping in, Jessica. And thank you." "Mr. CEO," Nathaniel chuckled, the harsh executive demeanor melting away to reveal a genuinely warm, fatherly smile. "Please call me Nathaniel, and there is no need to thank me. I am furious that my airline allowed you to be treated this way, even for a moment. You handled yourself with incredible grace, Miss Hughes." Nathaniel knelt down in the aisle so he was at eye level with Leo. "And you must be Leo," Nathaniel said, tapping the space patch on the boy's denim jacket. "I like your jacket, young man. I used to love rockets when I was your age. Are you really the boss of all the airplanes?" Leo asked, his eyes wide as saucers. "I am," Nathaniel smiled. "But right now I'm the pilot. And since we had a little bit of a rough start this morning, I want to make sure your flight to Disneyland is the best one ever. How would you like to come see the cockpit before we take off?" Leo gasped, looking up at his mother for permission. Chloe felt a wave of profound gratitude wash over her. "Go ahead, baby. Just don't touch any buttons." As Leo eagerly followed Nathaniel up to the flight deck, Chloe leaned back in her plush leather seat. She closed her eyes, letting the adrenaline finally leave her system. She had spent years fighting for a seat at the table in the cutthroat tech industry, battling the exact same type of microaggressions and blatant disrespect Bradley had just displayed. Today, she hadn't just survived the confrontation. She had watched the bully face the ultimate consequence. A few minutes later, Leo returned, clutching a set of plastic golden pilot wings pinned proudly to his jacket. He was beaming. Nathaniel stepped out behind him, giving Chloe a respectful nod before pulling the cockpit door shut to begin the delayed pushback. Once the aircraft leveled off at 35,000 feet over the American Midwest, the true luxury of the first-class experience began. Emily, eager to make up for the morning's trauma, treated Chloe and Leo like absolute royalty. They were served warm, scented towels, followed by a gourmet breakfast of Belgian waffles for Leo and a perfectly cooked spinach and feta frittata for Chloe. While Leo was happily engrossed in an animated movie, wearing his noise-canceling headphones, Chloe pulled out her laptop. The Wi-Fi on the flight was fast, and she had a few emails to clear out before she officially went into vacation mode. She opened her inbox and saw a highly flagged email from her lead project manager back in New York. Subject: urgent, Vanguard Investments audit. Chloe paused. She stared at the subject line, her heart doing a strange flutter. Vanguard Investments. That was Bradley Whitmore's firm. She clicked the email open. Hi, Chloe. Just got off the phone with the board at Vanguard. They are pushing back hard on our initial software audit report. Specifically, their SVP of Institutional Wealth, a guy named Bradley Whitmore, is claiming our consulting fee is too high and wants to renegotiate the terms of the cybersecurity overhaul we proposed. We need your sign-off before we proceed. Should we offer them the 10% discount to keep them happy, or stand firm on the contract? Chloe read the email twice, an incredulous smile slowly spreading across her face. The universe truly had a bizarre sense of humor. Her boutique software consulting firm specialized in overhauling archaic cybersecurity infrastructures for massive financial institutions. They were the best in the business, and Vanguard Investments desperately needed them to pass their upcoming federal compliance checks. Bradley Whitmore hadn't just insulted a random passenger. He had insulted the CEO of the very firm holding his department's technological future in her hands. Chloe cracked her knuckles, the satisfying pop sounding over the hum of the jet engines. She hit reply, stand firm on the contract. In fact, due to unforeseen market volatility and the expanded scope of their archaic systems, revise the proposal. Add a 15% premium to our consulting fee for the expedited timeline. Do not negotiate. If Bradley Whitmore has a problem with it, tell him he can reach out to me directly when I return from vacation. I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about. Best, Chloe Hughes, CEO. She hit send, closed her laptop, and slid it into her carry-on bag. She leaned over and pressed a kiss to the top of Leo's head. Is the movie good, sweetie? She asked. Leo pulled one side of his headphones off. It's awesome, Mom. This is the best day ever. Chloe looked out the window, watching the patchwork quilt of the American landscape roll by far below them. The sun was shining brilliantly above the clouds. Yes, it is, baby. It really is. For the next 4 hours, the flight was a masterclass in peace and comfort. Without Bradley's toxic presence, the cabin was relaxed. The older gentleman in row 3 even struck up a conversation with Chloe, revealing himself to be a retired patent attorney who was endlessly fascinated by her software business. When the flight finally began its descent into Los Angeles International Airport, Nathaniel's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We are beginning our final descent into Los Angeles, where the local time is 1:15 p.m. and the weather is a beautiful 75 degrees. I want to personally thank you all for your patience this morning. At our airline, we believe the skies are for everyone, and we are honored you chose to fly with us today. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin for arrival. As the wheels touched down on the tarmac with a smooth, barely noticeable bump, Chloe felt a profound sense of closure. The morning had started as a nightmare, an ugly reminder of the entitlement and prejudice that still existed in the world. But it had ended with a powerful reminder that there were still people willing to use their power to protect others. When the aircraft arrived at the gate, Nathaniel stepped out of the cockpit to personally say goodbye to the passengers. As Chloe and Leo approached the exit, Nathaniel handed Leo a sealed envelope. For you and your mom, Nathaniel smiled. To make sure your trip to Disneyland is absolutely perfect. Thank you, Captain Nathaniel. Leo cheered. Chloe shook Nathaniel's hand. Thank you for everything. You didn't just fix a seating dispute today. You showed my son what real leadership looks like. Have a wonderful vacation, Ms. Hughes, Nathaniel replied, and keep flying first class. You've earned it. Stepping out into the warm, golden California sunshine, Chloe opened the envelope. Inside were 4 VIP, front-of-the-line passes for every park at the Disneyland resort, along with a handwritten note that read, "The world needs more mothers like you. Enjoy the magic." Back in New York, the terminal at Equitas International Airport felt entirely different to Bradley Whitmore as he made the humiliating walk of shame back up the jet bridge. The 2 Port Authority police officers didn't speak to him, treating him with the silent professional detachment reserved for unruly vagrants. They escorted him all the way past the security checkpoints and out toward the curb of Terminal 4, leaving him standing on the concrete with his hard-shell briefcase and a deeply bruised ego. For a moment, Bradley just stood there, the chaotic sounds of honking taxicabs and rushing travelers swirling around him. He pulled out his phone, his hands trembling slightly with residual adrenaline and boiling rage. He needed to spin this. He needed to call his CEO, Thomas Waverly, and control the narrative before Nathaniel made good on his threat. He dialed the private line for Vanguard's executive office. It rang twice before it was picked up. "Thomas," Bradley started immediately, shifting into his most confident, persuasive corporate voice. "We have a massive problem with the airline. I was just subjected to the most unprofessional, hostile treatment by their flight crew, and frankly a completely unhinged pilot. I think we need our legal team to draft a letter regarding our corporate account." "Shut up, Bradley." Thomas Waverly's voice cut through the phone line like a jagged piece of glass. There was no greeting. There was no warmth. There was only the terrifying, quiet fury of a man who managed billions of dollars in assets. Bradley froze. The traffic around him seemed to mute. "Thomas, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Thomas interrupted, his voice laced with venom. "I just got off the phone with Nathaniel. He called me from the cockpit of his aircraft before takeoff. Do you have any idea what you have done? He was protecting a passenger who didn't belong. He was protecting a mother and her child from a bigoted, entitled liability." Thomas roared, finally losing his composure. "Nathaniel informed me that effective immediately, Vanguard Investments is permanently banned from utilizing their corporate travel network. Do you know what that means, Bradley? It means our logistics division is scrambling. It means we are losing our 30% corporate discount across hundreds of global flights. It means you just cost this firm millions of dollars because you couldn't keep your mouth shut over a seat assignment." Bradley loosened his tie, suddenly finding it very difficult to breathe. "Thomas, please. I can fix this. I'll issue a formal apology. We can leverage our other accounts. I have the cybersecurity audit finalized that will save us." "About that audit," Thomas said, his tone suddenly dropping into something far more dangerous than yelling. It was the tone of an executioner reading a sentence. "My assistant just forwarded me an email from the consulting firm handling our system upgrade, the one you were supposed to finalize this morning." Bradley swallowed hard. "Yes, I pushed back on their fee. I told them we needed a 10% discount. It's standard negotiation." "Standard negotiation," Thomas repeated hollowly. "They didn't give us a discount, Bradley. They slapped a 15% premium penalty on the contract for unforeseen market volatility and expedited timelines. Furthermore, they stated they will absolutely not negotiate." "They can't do that," Bradley protested, pacing furiously on the concrete curb. "We are Vanguard Investments. Who do they think they are? Fire them. We'll find another tech firm. We can't find another firm, you idiot, Thomas snapped. The federal compliance deadline is in 4 weeks. If we don't have their proprietary software integrated by then, the SEC will shut down our institutional wealth trading floor. We are completely at their mercy. And the best part, the CEO of the consulting firm left a very specific note attached to the revised contract. She said if you had a problem with the new fee, you could reach out to her directly when she returns from her vacation. A cold, creeping dread began to pool in the pit of Bradley's stomach. Her vacation? Yes, Thomas said. Do you know a woman named Chloe Hughes, Bradley? The name hit Bradley with the force of a freight train. Chloe Hughes, the name on the digital boarding pass he had glared at. The woman in the beige cashmere sweater. The woman he had publicly degraded, humiliated, and tried to have thrown out of first class. The woman whose child he had called a screaming brat. Bradley's knees literally buckled, forcing him to lean heavily against a concrete pillar for support. The world began to spin. He hadn't just insulted a random passenger. He had insulted the sole architect of Vanguard's technological survival. He had tried to evict the one woman holding the keys to his entire department. Aye, Bradley stuttered, entirely incapable of forming a coherent sentence. That's what I thought, Thomas said in disgust. You are a liability, Bradley. You are arrogant, you are careless, and your prejudice has finally caught up with you. Clear out your desk by 5 o'clock today. You're fired. The line went dead. Bradley lowered the phone from his ear. He looked out at the sprawling, busy airport, the massive planes taking off into the sky. He was a man who had built his entire identity on exclusivity, on ensuring he was always in the right room, the right cabin, the right tax bracket. Now he had absolutely nothing. 3,000 miles away, the golden afternoon sun was beating down on the bustling, colorful streets of Disneyland. The scent of spun sugar, warm churros, and popcorn wafted through the air, mixing with the joyful screams of children echoing from the nearby roller coasters. For Chloe Hughes, it was nothing short of paradise. She stood near the entrance of Tomorrowland, watching with a beaming smile as Leo sprinted toward the astro-orbiter, his golden pilot wings catching the California sunlight. Thanks to Nathaniel's VIP passes, they hadn't waited in a single line all day. They had bypassed the massive crowds, riding Leo's favorite attractions back to back, eating their weight in Mickey-shaped ice cream, and soaking in the pure, unadulterated magic of the park. Okay, Mom, watch me, Leo shouted, climbing into one of the rocket ships and giving her a massive, enthusiastic thumbs up. I'm watching, baby. Fly high, Chloe called back, waving. As the ride hummed to life and the rockets began to ascend, Chloe felt a soft vibration in the pocket of her jeans. She pulled out her phone. It was an incoming call from an unknown New York number. Normally, she would send it straight to voicemail. She was on vacation after all. But a profound, intuitive gut feeling told her exactly who was on the other end of the line. She swiped the screen and brought the phone to her ear. Chloe Hughes speaking. Miss Hughes. Good afternoon. A deep, strained, but highly professional voice came through the speaker. This is Thomas Waverley. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Vanguard Investments. Chloe leaned against the cool metal railing, keeping her eyes fixed on Leo's rocket ship as it spun through the air. A slow, satisfied smile curved her lips. Mr. Waverley, to what do I owe the pleasure? I believe my project manager mentioned I am out of the office until next week. I am aware and I profusely apologize for interrupting your vacation, Thomas said, his tone dripping with an uncomfortable mixture of deference and desperation. but I felt it was absolutely necessary to reach out to you personally regarding the revised cybersecurity contract your firm submitted this morning." "Ah, yes," Chloe said smoothly, adjusting her sunglasses. "The 15% premium. As I stated in my email, those terms are strictly non-negotiable. If Vanguard is unable to meet the financial requirements for our expedited timeline, I completely understand. We can void the contract and you are free to seek other vendors." No, that won't be necessary," Thomas interjected hastily. "Vanguard is fully prepared to accept the revised terms, including the premium. We recognize the immense value your firm brings to our infrastructure. I will personally sign the authorization this afternoon and wire the initial retainer." "Excellent," Chloe replied, her voice the picture of calm, corporate professionalism. "I am glad we could come to an agreement. I expect my team to have full, unhindered access to your servers by Monday morning." There was a heavy pause on the line. Chloe could practically hear the Vanguard CEO swallowing his pride. "Miss Hughes," Thomas continued, his voice lowering significantly, "I also wanted to address another matter. It has been brought to my attention that you had a profoundly unpleasant encounter this morning with one of our former employees, a Mr. Bradley Whitmore." Chloe's smile widened, though her voice remained steady and cool. "Former, yes," Thomas confirmed, a hard edge returning to his voice. "Vanguard Investments has a zero-tolerance policy for the kind of abhorrent behavior Mr. Whitmore displayed today. We do not employ individuals who treat others with such blatant disrespect and prejudice. His employment was terminated immediately." Chloe looked up at the bright blue sky. She thought about the cold, icy glare Bradley had given her at the boarding gate. She thought about the way he had tried to make her son feel small, insignificant, and unworthy of the space they occupied. She thought about how many times in her life she had been forced to simply swallow the indignity and walk away. "Not today. I appreciate you letting me know, Mr. Waverley," Chloe said, her voice softening just a fraction. "Leadership is defined by how we handle the worst among us. You made the right call. We look forward to a very long and successful partnership with your firm, Ms. Hughes. Please enjoy the rest of your vacation." "Thank you. Goodbye, Mr. Waverley." Chloe hung up the phone. She took a deep breath, inhaling the sweet, sugary air of the theme park. The weight of the morning, the anxiety, the anger, the sheer exhaustion of having to constantly prove her right to exist in premium spaces finally vanished completely. It was replaced by an ironclad sense of empowerment. She had built her company from the ground up. She had earned every single dollar, every single mile, and every single ounce of respect. And she had just proven that no one, no matter how wealthy or entitled, could ever take that away from her. The Astro Orbiter ride slowed to a halt. Leo came running out the exit gate, his face flushed with excitement. "Did you see me, Mom? I was flying higher than everybody else." He cheered, throwing his arms around her waist. Chloe dropped to her knees, hugging her son tightly. She pressed a long, loving kiss to his forehead. She looked at his bright, innocent eyes, so full of wonder and unburdened by the cruelty of the world. She promised herself, right then and there, that she would always protect that light. She would always ensure he knew he belonged in the first row, in the boardroom, in the sky, and anywhere else he wanted to go. "I saw you, my brave pilot," Chloe whispered, her heart overflowing with love. "You flew higher than anyone. Now, who's ready for the Pirates of the Caribbean?" "Me!" Leo yelled, grabbing her hand and pulling her toward Adventureland. As they walked away, hand in hand, the golden pilot wings on Leo's jacket gleamed brightly. It was a beautiful day in California, and for Chloe and Leo, the sky was no longer the limit. It was just the beginning. If you loved this story of absolute justice and seeing an arrogant bully get exactly what he deserves, hit that like button right now. We bring you the most satisfying, drama-filled real-life stories every single week, so make sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on the action. Have you ever encountered an entitled passenger on a flight, or had to deal with a real-life corporate bully? Let us know how you handled it down in the comments below. Share this video with your friends to spread the satisfaction. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next incredible story.